If you go out searching for a place and lose your map along the way, what will you do? If you go on an adventure, would you take your trusted friend, or would you go alone? Let's find out. Jack's love for adventure began when he was very young. His grandfather, a retired sailor, used to tell him stories about his travels around the world. Jack would sit wide-eyed as his grandfather described vast oceans, mysterious islands, and hidden treasures. Each story sparked Jack's imagination, and he dreamed of one day having his own adventure. Jack's grandfather had a small house near the coast, filled with relics from his journeys. The house was like a museum, with maps on the walls, old ship models on the shelves, and strange objects from distant lands. Jack spent many afternoons there, listening to his grandfather's tales and exploring the treasures of the past. One rainy afternoon, while exploring the dusty old attic, Jack stumbled upon a wooden chest. It was tucked away in a corner, hidden under old blankets and forgotten for years. The chest was heavy and had a large lock, but it was slightly ajar. With a sense of excitement, Jack carefully lifted the lid. Inside the chest were old books, maps, and strange artifacts. But one item caught Jack's eye, a rolled-up map that looked older than anything he had ever seen. The paper was yellowed with age and the edges were frayed. As Jack unrolled the map, he saw that it depicted an island shaped like a serpent, with a large red X marked near its center. Jack's heart raced. Could this be a real treasure map? He knew his grandfather had many maps from his travels, but this one felt different. It seemed ancient and mysterious, as if it held secrets waiting to be uncovered. Jack's mind filled with possibilities. Could there really be treasure hidden on the island? And if so, who had left it there? Jack rushed downstairs to show the map to his grandfather. The old man's eyes widened when he saw it. He recognized the island immediately. "This is Serpent Island," his grandfather said in a hushed voice. "I've heard tales about it, but I never thought it was real. They say the island is cursed, and many who have tried to find the treasure have never returned." Jack's excitement grew. A cursed island? A hidden treasure? This was the adventure he had always dreamed of, but his grandfather's warning echoed in his mind. Could the stories be true? Was the island really dangerous? Despite his grandfather's warnings, Jack couldn't resist the lure of adventure. He spent the next few days preparing for the journey. He packed a bag with everything he thought he might need: food, water, a flashlight, a compass, and the map. He studied the map carefully, trying to memorize every detail. He also gathered information about Serpent Island, though there wasn't much to find. Most people considered it a myth, a legend from old sailors' tales. Jack's parents were concerned when he told them he was going on a camping trip, but they trusted him. They had no idea about the real adventure he was planning. Jack felt a twinge of guilt for not telling them the truth, but he knew they wouldn't understand. This was his adventure, and he had to follow it wherever it led. The day finally arrived. Jack's grandfather gave him a long, thoughtful look as he handed over the key to the small boat he kept moored at the harbor. "Be careful, Jack," he said. "Adventure is exciting, but it can also be dangerous. Trust your instincts and remember what I've taught you." Jack nodded, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. He said goodbye to his parents, promising to be back in a few days, and then he set off towards the coast. The boat was small but sturdy, and Jack had sailed it many times before. As he untied the ropes and started the engine, he couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. He was about to embark on a real adventure. The journey to Serpent Island was longer and more challenging than Jack had anticipated. The sea was rough, with strong winds and large waves that rocked the small boat. Jack had to navigate carefully, using the map and his grandfather's old compass to stay on course. The sky was overcast, and dark clouds loomed on the horizon, threatening a storm. But Jack was determined. He had waited his whole life for an adventure like this, and he wasn't going to let a little bad weather stop him. As he sailed further from the coast, the air grew colder, and the waves became more intense. Jack tightened his grip on the wheel and focused on the horizon, where the shape of the island was slowly coming into view. The map Jack had discovered filled his dreams with thoughts of hidden treasure and mysterious islands. However, the more he studied it, the more he realized that this would be no ordinary adventure. To reach Serpent Island, Jack would need more than just excitement and courage. He needed to prepare thoroughly. Jack began his research by visiting the town's library. He had never spent much time there before, but now he was determined to find out everything he could about Serpent Island. The library was old and filled with dusty books, and the librarian, Mrs. Peterson, was a quiet, elderly woman who seemed to know every book on every shelf. Jack hesitated before asking her about Serpent Island, worried she might dismiss it as just a legend. But to his surprise, Mrs. Peterson's eyes lit up when he mentioned the name. "Ah, Serpent Island," she said, her voice filled with nostalgia. "Many have sought its treasure, but few have ever returned. It's said to be cursed, guarded by a serpent that never sleeps. But the island itself, it's real, or so the stories go." Jack leaned in closer, eager for more details. Mrs. Peterson pulled out an old leather-bound book from a high shelf and blew off the dust. "This might help you," she said, handing it to Jack. The book was titled Legends of the Lost Isles. Jack spent hours in the library poring over the book. It was filled with stories of explorers who had ventured to Serpent Island, describing treacherous seas, strange creatures, and the legendary serpent that guarded the treasure. The book mentioned ancient traps and puzzles that protected the treasure, adding layers of danger to the journey. As he read, Jack's excitement grew, but so did his sense of caution. This wasn't just a fun adventure. It was a dangerous one. He would need to be prepared for anything. Jack decided to gather more supplies. He visited the town's general store where Mr. Thompson, the owner, helped him choose what he might need. Jack picked out extra food and water, a sturdy rope, a small first aid kit, and a knife. He also bought a waterproof bag to keep the map and other important items safe. "Going camping?" Mr. Thompson asked as he rang up the items. "Something like that," Jack replied, trying to keep his excitement in check. At home, Jack packed and repacked his bag, making sure he had everything he might need. He checked the weather forecast, which predicted rough seas, but he decided to go anyway. He felt a mix of fear and excitement, knowing that he was about to do something extraordinary. Jack also spent time repairing and preparing the boat. The small vessel had seen many years of use, and it needed a bit of care before it could take on such a journey. He checked the engine, patched up any leaks, and made sure the sails were in good condition. His grandfather watched him work, offering advice and encouragement, though Jack could tell he was worried. The night before Jack was set to leave, his parents noticed his unusual behavior. He had been so focused on preparing that he had barely spoken to them. At dinner, his mother asked, "Are you sure you're just going camping, Jack? You seem different." Jack hesitated. He didn't want to lie, but he knew they wouldn't understand his need for adventure. "Yeah, just a camping trip," he said with a forced smile. "I'll be back in a few days." His father looked at him closely. "Just be careful, son. The sea can be unpredictable." "I will, Dad," Jack promised. That night, Jack could hardly sleep. He lay in bed thinking about the island, the treasure, and the serpent. He was nervous, but also filled with a determination he had never felt before. He knew this journey would change him, no matter what happened. Early the next morning, before the sun had risen, Jack left a note for his parents and quietly slipped out of the house. The town was still asleep as he made his way to the harbor, where his grandfather was waiting by the boat. "You're really going then?" his grandfather said softly. Jack nodded. His grandfather handed him a small wrapped package. "This is for you. It's something that's been in our family for generations. It might help you." Jack unwrapped the package to find a small silver compass. It was old with intricate designs carved into the metal, and it felt warm in his hand. "Thank you," Jack said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Take care, Jack," his grandfather said, giving him a tight hug. "And remember, the greatest treasure is not gold or jewels, but the adventure itself." With those words in his heart, Jack boarded the boat, started the engine, and set sail. The sky was a pale gray as the sun began to rise, casting a golden glow over the sea. Jack felt a sense of freedom and excitement as he sailed away from the shore, leaving everything familiar behind. He was ready for whatever lay ahead. As Jack sailed further from the coast, the sea became increasingly unpredictable. The weather was erratic, shifting from calm to stormy within hours. The sun rose high in the sky, but dark clouds quickly rolled in, bringing strong winds and heavy rain. Jack had prepared for bad weather, but nothing could have fully readied him for the sheer force of the storm that struck. The waves grew taller, crashing against the sides of the small boat. Jack struggled to keep the vessel steady, gripping the wheel with all his strength. The wind howled around him, and the boat was tossed about like a toy in a bathtub. Water splashed over the sides, soaking Jack to the bone, but he kept his focus on the horizon, where the shape of Serpent Island was slowly becoming visible. For hours, Jack battled the storm, his arms aching from holding the wheel. He had never experienced anything like it. The sky was dark, and lightning flashed in the distance, followed by the deep rumble of thunder. Jack knew he had to keep the boat on course, but the wind and waves seemed determined to push him off track. At one point, a particularly large wave nearly capsized the boat. Jack was thrown off balance, and the map he had placed on the dashboard was swept overboard by the wind. Panic surged through him as he watched it disappear into the sea. Without the map, he would be lost. But then he remembered the compass his grandfather had given him. Jack pulled out the silver compass from his pocket. It glowed faintly in the dim light, and the needle pointed steadily towards the island. Taking a deep breath, Jack relied on the compass to guide him. He couldn't afford to lose hope now, not when he was so close. As the storm raged on, Jack noticed something strange in the water. At first he thought it was just his imagination, but then he saw it again. A dark shape moving beneath the surface, following the boat. His heart pounded as he realized it wasn't just a trick of the light. Something was swimming alongside him, something large and menacing. Jack tried to get a better look, but the rain and waves made it difficult to see clearly. Whatever it was, it stayed just out of sight, as if it were watching him. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that it was waiting for the right moment to strike. Despite his fear, Jack kept the boat moving forward, following the compass. The shape in the water continued to follow him, and Jack had to fight the urge to panic. He knew that losing his nerve now would only make things worse. He focused on the task at hand, navigating through the storm and keeping the boat on course. Part 1 of this story ends here. What might be the dark shape? Will this dark shape put an end to his journey? To find out, click the video here or follow the link in the description.